Hello and welcome to another episode of the CG Garage. This is episode number 353, featuring Jelmer Boskma, visual effects supervisor over at ScanlineVFX in London. Jelmer is a very, very cool guy who I had the privilege of getting to meet and to talk to. He worked most recently, he worked on the Eternals, but he's done incredible work all over the place, and was able to sit down with him and actually talk about his life and the journey of his life, which is quite a journey, isn't it, Kristen?
Yes, it's fast. I loved it. He gives us the whole rundown, just from starting off kind of in Vancouver, going to school there, and Journey to the Center of the Earth. That was his first work, and then he moved on to Tron and Sucker Punch, and then how he became a visual effects supervisor. I love that story. It was the Miss Peregrine's Home for Peculiar Children, and he kind of submitted his ideas, and Tim Burton loved it, and the owner, Scanline, is like, you should be a VFX soup. He's like, okay, but he's super humble about it. Right. And he's gone on to Ant-Man and the Wasp, and like you said, Eternals, which is out now. And then he just goes into a little bit Scanline when work from home began and just how seamless that was. So it was just interesting hearing, how another studio does the work from home. And he also just, when you asked him about how he thought of Eternals, he just can't comment on it for another 2 or 3 years. Because everyone's just a perfectionist in this industry, and, it takes a minute to...
Yeah, it is very challenging for us to think, to comment on the film that we just worked on, because we see the shots over and over and over again, and it's really hard to sort of objectively think about the film. So it's kind of interesting that way. But nonetheless, it was really great to talk to him and to see his opinion on these things and his life's journey, and definitely a very, very nice, sweet, and charismatic person. So it was really great to see him and to have him on. And thank you so much. And we hope to be able to talk to him again. I do want to note, though, that I know that the news came out recently that Scanline has been acquired by Netflix. We recorded this podcast before that happened. So he obviously, we don't talk about it, and we didn't actually know about it during the time of the recording, but hopefully Scanline will be able to, get back with us and give us a little bit more information. I'm sure it's all very new information. They probably can't comment it just yet, but hopefully when they are able to comment on it, we will be able to get a little bit more from them, which would be really cool. Okay, now, just a couple of other things. We have, even though it's towards the end of the year and generally things wind down, we do have one event coming up. What's going on, Kristen?
Yeah, so this Thursday, December 9th, it will be the V-Ray for Cinema 4D workshop. And so you'll be able to join Stefano and Viola from the 3D Render and Beyond, which is the first official Chaos Authorized Training Center. And it'll be during this year's D2 Holiday Time Spectacular event. And they will host a 2-hour workshop and show you how to recreate one of Zaha Hadid Architect's Max Museum of the 21st Century Arts using Cinema 4D R25 and V-Ray 5 for Cinema 4D. So you can find that out, at chaos.com/events.
That's right. Cool. Wow. That's a lot of information. So chaos.com/events is where you find all of this. It is a Cinema 4D workshop centered around visual effects. ArcViz, and it'd be really great to do that. And again, that was the Cinema 4D and V-Ray 5 for Cinema 4D. We don't have any new product announcements coming up right now because obviously, like we said, it's the end of the year. But we do have, go check out a bunch of our V-Ray 5 update 2s on a lot of our products. You can check that out on our page if you want more information. But if people want to know more about the podcast, Kristen, where can they go?
You can go to facebook.com/CG Garage Podcast or chaos.com/CG Garage. And if you'd like to watch us, go to youtube.com/Chaos Group TV.
Great. And if you guys have any ideas for podcasts or you'd like to comment on this one or other podcast, please let us know. labs@chaosgroup.com is the best way to email us. Again, that's labs@chaosgroup.com. And of course, don't forget to leave us a review and a rating on Apple Podcast. And that's about it. As for now, please enjoy episode number 353, Jelmer Boskma.
Welcome to another CG Garage, where the Chaos Group talks. You'll know it's over when the last bucket drops. We're gonna fire off rays in high dynamic range. We know that ambient occlusion is passé. Global illumination won't lead you astray. And while image-based lighting is really swell, you need to make sure everything has Fresnel.
I actually have to, before I forget, to say hello from Jesse James Chisholm.
Oh, of course, Jesse.
Yeah, did a little bit of just a day job for them the other last week. Early
nice.
this week, actually, yeah.
Okay.
And I was like, I think, oh, you're talking to Chris. Yeah, that's such a class. You just end up drinking whiskey and shooting the breeze.
Well, it's a little early in the morning for that.
It is a bit early, yeah.
But yeah, no, it's great. Jesse and I worked on several shows together. He's a really nice guy. Really great guy.
Way to go.
Yeah. Well,
Yeah.
that's cool.
Now,
All right.
a few of my friends have popped up on the podcast before, so I've listened to their episodes. It's always been great fun. Just I'm late to the party. Clearly.
Well, yeah. I'm over. I've been doing this for over 7 years, and I've got over 350 episodes. So I'm surprised I still know more people to interview.
That's
So
amazing.
yeah, it's been amazing. Well, listen. So I know I've you and I actually worked at DD at the same time on a couple of things, but I don't know if we actually ran into each other, or worked on the same shows. So but I want to know a little bit more about you. Oh, and by the way, I want to also say, my friend Sally Slade, who I talked to, she says hi to you.
Well,
So there you go.
that's wonderful. Yes.
All right, so
Sally,
let's hear your origin
Sally's
story.
my whiskey buddy.
She is a good whiskey buddy. She's a great whiskey buddy.
Yeah.
But so before you got all these whiskey buddies, what's your origin story? Where did you all start getting into visual effects or getting your passion for movie making?
Well, speaking of previous guests, that's a short departure, because that would be the first guy who hired me was Chris Harvey.
Really?
Yeah, Frantic Films, Vancouver. I was right out of school when ZBrush was still a bit of a niche. Mm-hmm. So, yeah, it was on a show called Journey to the Center of the Earth with Brendan Fraser.
Right. Fraser. Yeah, I always say Fraser too,
yeah.
but it's Fraser.
Yeah. They had just opened up shop in Vancouver, and they were looking for somebody who could sculpt and help with the creatures, some fish creatures, and a plesiosaurus. So I think they got either in touch with Vancouver Film School, which is where I was just about to graduate from at that point. Either that, or it was I can't quite place it anymore. It was in a time when CG Talk was sort of the place to be, the big forum where everybody kind of put out their work, and when your reel hit that front page, that was a huge deal in terms of exposure. So I forgot if it was through that or just literally directly through the school, but it was at the end of my studies there, and I went in for an interview, met with Chris, and it was a lot of fun. It was great. So yeah, I ended up being there for a year and a half, and a fantastic introduction really to the business, and kind of spoiled for life. Just, hey, we have this creature, and can you take care of like all of it at that point? And like model it, sculpt it, refine the design a little bit, texture it. It was great.
But this was Vancouver Film School teaching CG at that time, or was it?
Yeah,
something
they were. It was for quite a bit actually. Their 3D animation program was. Like, speaking of CG Talk, like I was interested in going there because it seemed that every 2 or 3 months, demo reels from their students would appear and just blow up, and it's like, this is incredible, and they do it in a year. Like, what kind of magic goes on there? But I was very curious and applied and got admitted, and so went through that. Let me think.
But what was your interest in that, and what got you interested in CG before you even got to school?
Well, it's interesting. I was still kind of finding out what I really wanted to do. Initially, I thought maybe I want to try and do a short film or learn animation properly. But as soon as I enrolled into the program, you kind of go through half a year, at least back then, half a year of a little bit of everything. So this is what it takes to get, an animated character on screen, and this is what we call modeling, and this is rigging. And I had been dabbling in 3D at home, in the modding community, which was huge, like for games like Unreal and Quake.
Right.
And that's how I kind of got into it. And it's like, this is a lot of fun. And I think I want to do more with this. I did either that and a bit of web design. So those were the two things I was playing around with. And then I think I want to do this a little bit more serious. So I tried to go to school in the Netherlands, and I felt like this is not it. It's like more classical art school, and it didn't mesh with me at that point. So I ended up, like, if I ever want to take this further, this seems to be the Hogwarts of CG at the time, Nomen or Vancouver Film School.
Right.
And it just so happened that it turned out to be VFS. And you get a bit of a flavor of everything. And then I really enjoyed the modeling part there. And I think it was one of my instructors who actually said, you're going into the modeling stream, right? Because the latter half of the year of your studies, because it is only a year, but the latter half, you essentially spend more focus and working on a demo reel. So you have something coming out of school that you can, shop around.
Right.
He said, you're going into modeling, right? It's like, I hadn't made up my mind, but there was a lot of support for me to go into that direction, and I did, and I met some great, I think I was very lucky with fellow students at that time. There were some incredibly talented people around who were, all very much aware of, we can be friends now, but we're fighting for the same jobs at the same time. So there's that beautiful mix of camaraderie, but also a little bit of healthy competition that just ends up pushing everyone. So went through that and finished a demo reel. And just put it online. That's really what it was about, like on the forums. Right. And as I remember being, I was a big part of I loved the ZBrush Central, ZBrush community. Very enamored with ZBrush, which was around ZBrush 2 back then.
Okay.
So it's kind of clunky interface. A lot of people hate it. It's like, this doesn't make any sense. It's so weird, and it's nothing like. It's still this. It's still. Yeah,
it's not. It doesn't have the same logic that other.
No, it doesn't. Not at all. There's no file save, and we had very limited time to do anything. But I ended up trying to learn it, because it's like, this is the next big thing for sure. And this was 2006, 2005, 2006, mind you. So we were just leaving NURBS modeling and getting into polygonal modeling, but there was no teaching in ZBrush. Right. And Mudbox was just in beta. Yep. I wasn't even out at that point. So I got to learn the ZBrush stuff, and I used it, but just as a sort of a 3D projection tool to get fine details into a otherwise completely hand modeled creature. And I posted that it was a little chicken with hands, like a dinosaur chicken.
Okay.
Maybe I have to send you a picture. Sounds really weird. But that was like a first piece, and I worked on that for months, I think, to really take it from start to finish, and then finish it up in ZBrush, do some renders, and I posted that on the ZBrush forums. And a day or two later, it appeared on their featured work, and I was like, oh my God. And I go through the comments, and it's like, it's like, is this good? And I got a comment from Monster Maker, and people said, that's a huge deal. That's Rick Baker. It's like, who is Rick Baker?
Yeah.
No, he's incredible. He's won a gazillion Oscars. And it was just a tiny comment of like, hey, ZBrush is fun, isn't it, Jelmer? And this looks great. So it's like 5 words, but oh my gosh, like, that really lit a fire under my ass. It's like, wow, this is really cool. And I guess I've kind of found my way, my passion.
Yeah.
And So so yeah, took that a little further, 2 or 3 more pieces, and that's your reel, and that's all you have at that stage as a student, and that was enough to catch the attention of Frantic for that project they had coming up. They were just finishing up, I believe, on Fantastic Four Silver Surfer.
Yep.
Yeah, so ended up staying in Vancouver for a while longer, and did that show. Yeah, it was great.
So did you go to Vancouver for film school, or were you already there?
No, I'm from the Netherlands originally, so born
Right.
and
So you
raised there.
So you traveled from the Netherlands to Vancouver to go to school then, right?
Yeah, so I had to convince my parents a little bit, like, yeah, this is a good idea. Yeah, this is the place to go. I know it's far away, but trust me. And they did, and which is ridiculous in hindsight. Like, really? You have to go all the way there, and it costs a fortune. Like back then it did. Now it's even worse. I'm not going to say it's criminal, but I mean, oh my goodness.
Yeah.
But yeah, for me, it worked out phenomenally well, but primarily because of my fellow students, the people that I met, and just that's what made it worth it. Just that exposure and that camaraderie, and great stuff for everyone during that time. I don't know what it's like these days. I'm sure it's still great.
That's good. Well, there's certainly demand for more people in CG these days. A lot of demand. So that's great.
There's a lot of stuff being made, period. There is so much content. It's unbelievable.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
All right. Well, so you met Chris, who is a great guy.
Yes.
And it was really cool. So you ended up at Frantic. For how long were you at Frantic for?
I think just a year and a half, maybe.
Okay.
So Journey was the big thing there, and then I did a little bit of generalist work on Mr. Magorium's Wonder Emporium. Classic. It's fun. And then a bit of on-set work previous. We had a previous department for Watchmen, which was shooting in Vancouver. Zack Snyder's Watchmen. So did a little bit of that. And then I felt, I don't know, it got a little itchy. So I think it's time for me to try something else. And I had a friend who you know, Miguel Ortega.
Oh, yeah.
Who was at Cafe FX at the time in Santa Maria. Mm-hmm. And we had never met, but just sort of these online connections back then seemed to be, I don't know, they were my whole world at times, these forums, and it feels like real people, like you've known for a long time, but all we know really was just people, our posts and the work. But we had been in touch, and through him I ended up doing some freelance work, and this was also at a time where I kind of left to go to Vancouver for studies, but while I was there, my grandfather passed away, and it was just such a divide, a cultural divide for me. Like my childhood in Europe, in the Netherlands, and then, adulthood in North America. And I think I was missing the Netherlands a lot, so I needed to go back. Just felt strongly I needed to, connect again with friends and stuff, because it was not like a gradual, I'm leaving home, and everything was different, like a different language, different culture, geographically completely across the globe. So I needed to touch base again with people back home, and ended up freelancing for a bit from home for Cafe FX, which was interesting, a very different experience working remotely, of course. And I did that for about a year, got my driver's license, which I hadn't done before, because before I was eligible, I left to Vancouver. Driving age is a little higher in the Netherlands. So after that, I'm trying to just put the timeline together, but at a certain point, Image Engine called, for a show called District 9, which I know nothing about, other than it's creatures. A friend of mine was working on that as well over there. It's like, okay, well, get to go back to Vancouver. That sounds like fun. Short contract, couple months. And the other vendor on the show is Weta, and I'm a big fan of the work they did because, you know, just on the heels of the Lord of the Rings movies when I was a student, so that was hugely inspirational, of course.
Right.
So I thought, oh wow, that's cool. That sounds really interesting. So yeah, ended up signing for that.
Had you seen the shorts that Neil Blomkamp did before?
I
District
hadn't
9?
at that point. No, I was
Right.
going in completely blank on the. I had two friends, Marco and Juliana, who were both part of the team already and working on it. And the world seemed a little smaller back then, to my recollection at least. Maybe I'm romanticizing it slightly, but yeah, ended up going back to Vancouver for that project, and it was incredible to. As far as we don't often, you know, have much influence on the final outcome of the film. I mean, that's the writing, the directing, the performances. We do our best,
Right.
but we have no idea if it's going to be a good movie. But this felt very special right from the start. This felt different and fresh, and with an incredible amount of talent under one roof for that particular project, which was nice to be around. And all those people, there's most of them are still, you know, either at ILM or even stayed at Image Engine, but they're still around. But they were, you know, pretty damn senior back then already. So that was really cool to work on that. That was, yeah. And after that, I think I went back. Yeah, I went back home again, being the Netherlands, and ended up. Well, here's the thing. It's getting a bit private, if that's okay.
Sure.
So, right at the end of my contract, so Juliana, Juliana Kalakis, a phenomenal artist, and she did all the texturing on the creatures. Mind you, before Mari, so that was like getting between textured tiles. It was just doing it in Photoshop, and we did some rudimentary projection stuff with Z-Applink, which was like take a flat screenshot in ZBrush that gets bridged over to Photoshop. You can kind of paint on the seams and then project that back, and it's ridiculous when you think about it now. But
Right.
her birthday was coming up, and she said, "Okay, we were having a little get together and dinner or something." And so I ended up going out for that and met this lady who I stayed in touch with, and is now my wife. So long story short, but obviously she lived in Vancouver, and I went back to the Netherlands. My contract was ending, and yeah, we just stayed in touch through the web and just got to know each other. And at a certain point, I felt, okay, I got to get out of here again. I'm getting itchy. I don't want to sit in my room here. I want to work on something again. And sure enough, and this is really funny because it was, I think, hours from each other, I get two emails
Okay.
out of the blue. One was from MPC and one was from Prime Focus, which was essentially Frantic Films before
Right.
they got bought out. And it was for the exact same show. It's crazy. Like out of the blue, like hours apart from each other. Like I said, the world was a bit smaller back then, it seemed.
Yeah.
So it's like, okay, we have some characters, there's some digi-double work, and it's a show called Sucker Punch,
Right.
directed by Zack Snyder. I was like, I can't believe it. So I told Aisha, my wife, back then, nothing serious, but just we had met, and she had come to the Netherlands and visit me. It was wonderful. So things had gotten a little more serious, and I said, well, you wouldn't believe it, but it seems like destiny is pushing me once again back to Vancouver.
Right.
And I have this opportunity to work on this project Sucker Punch, and it's either at this place called MPC or Prime Focus, which is Chris Harvey and my old friends from Frantic.
Right.
And she just asked, okay, where are these places? And I said, well, I looked at the addresses, and Prime Focus was literally 2 blocks away from her apartment. And she told me that. So I said, all right, guess I'm moving in.
Decision made.
Yeah, there you go. Decision made. And yeah, so then I was back in Vancouver and stayed for 8 or 9 years. 10?
Wow.
Long time.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Were you at Prime Focus the whole time?
No. Sucker Punch was one project, and another project that tied into that was Tron Legacy.
Oh, I was on Tron Legacy. Yeah.
Yes. Which was wonderful because that was an interesting project for me. I know you've spoken to Dmitry Vinnik, who I worked with on that show, and of course
right.
Chris,
Yeah.
which was interesting because I had been primarily modeling and doing creature stuff and a bit dabbled in some design here and there.
Right.
And Chris mentioned, hey, we're going to be doing this show, Tron, and have you ever considered doing matte painting? I was like, what do you mean, matte? No, not really. Like,
Right.
I think you'd be quite good at it. Would you, huh? Would you? I was like, all right, well, let me think about it. And the style of the project was so 3D based that I think it was a really interesting hybrid, and ended up saying yes. And it was a great opportunity because all of a sudden I was in a position where instead of worrying about, well, one element within the frame, it is now the entirety of the frame I get to concern myself about, which was very interesting to me. And learned a lot on that show. I mean, it's heavily art directed, of course, and stylized, and we were concerning ourselves with a chunk of it. The main vendor, of course, was Digital Domain, and we got some assets from them, and started working on that and painting on top of it, and just learning that as going through the project, really. But that really opened my eyes how much I enjoyed that, because before then it was like, wow, wouldn't it be, back to the Rick Baker moment. It was like that'd be kind of wicked to just hone your craft, digital creatures to the point where you are, it's like world renowned for that very specific thing. And I thought that was kind of the direction I was aiming for, until I realized I actually really enjoy thinking about the composition within the frame, or the bigger picture, lighting and mood and all of those things. So yeah, thanks to Chris for saying you want to give it a go. This is a kind of shot in the dark, but I'm so happy that it was late nights, and me and Dimitri he was working on the look dev for the Solar Sailor, and I was trying to wrap my head around what this, I think it was called the sub level.
Oh, right.
Underneath the city, what that was gonna look like. We had a piece of concept art, but a lot of it had to be figured out. But sort of kit bash some of those wonderful DD assets, and constructing something that could work. But it's ridiculous thinking about how that trust came to to this kid.
Yeah.
I'd never really done it before. You must know Mark Rienzo.
Yeah, of course.
Yeah, so Mark would come by after his day shift at DD.
Yep.
And like sort of check in. He was given that that role as like third party vendor.
Yeah, he was the outsourced supervisor, and that's what
outsourced supervisor. Sure. Yes. But he'd come by, and it was a very, very relaxed sort of atmosphere. But I was always at my desk till what seemed like midnight, and so we chatted a little bit, and we're still in touch vaguely, because he's gone on to do some wonderful stuff for Marvel, and our paths have sort of almost crossed, but more parallel than anything. There's not a lot of overlap, but got to meet him and work a little bit with him, and learned a tremendous amount, enough to sort of change my way of thinking of what I wanted to do, or where I wanted to go with all this.
Yeah.
It happened on Tron. Yeah.
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 So you were at Prime Focus. You were working on Tron. I guess that was the first time you dabbled in matte painting. But did you started to realize that you wanted to look beyond certain things, or did that give you an itch to explore other crafts?
Yeah, absolutely. Because it made me realize how enjoyable that is and how fulfilling and rewarding it is to essentially take something that was before previs was that common. I don't recall if we had any like previs. We may have some rough blocking of scenes, but it was essentially, okay, we have this environment, figure it out. And to take that from start to finish was, and then to have that just, eventually become reality on the screen, faux reality that is, but regardless, very rewarding, and I enjoyed that. And then I noticed how much I've always enjoyed designing, like not just the artisan way of making a beautiful sculpture, but as a modeler would do, but also, concerning myself with why things look a certain way, or can it be better, or anyway, just creative process of thinking of this stuff. And I felt there was maybe a way to dabble in that a little bit more through matte painting. But my next step actually was not so much matte painting. It was actually joining DD in Vancouver, which had just opened up, and was finishing up Tron, obviously, and Thor was the next one up. Yeah, so that's where I got to work with Miguel, who had been brought over to Vancouver for that, and it would be fun. So he was, "Are you available?" And I was, "Oh man, it'd be a blast to work together, actually in person." And so he got me in on that, on Thor, on the at DD. Yeah, but that was back to it's not like it was a huge diversion, but working on models and digidoubles. Did the digidouble for King Laufey, the King of the Frost Giants.
Yep.
Played by Colm Feore. Which was fun, and it was especially fun because my friend Arjen, who's a special effects makeup artist, Arjen Tuiten, he did the physical appliances for Colm. So I think he was working at Stan Winston's at the time, and he did the makeup for Laufey. So
Nice.
I said, "Hey, I'm working on Thor." It's like, "Oh, cool." And he sort of mentioned that what he did, and I said, "Okay, this is probably, breaking all sorts of NDAs, but you will not believe it. I'm doing the digital version of your work." So what he did was like, "Well, let me help you." And he sent me all these photographs of the original sculptures, like just this Chavant clay sculptures with the details beautifully visible, and these initial tests and wonderful close-up reference that we didn't have access to. That didn't pop up, so it's really funny that I got this inside scoop to really nailing that asset, and which was fun, and then quite rewarding because I don't know, later in production, I guess a couple shots were conceived where they needed a digital version of that particular character, so that was cool to see it being used for that, and ending up on screen the way it did. And then a lot of rocks, I remember that. Less excited about that, but hey, gotta do it, right? We all have to go through that phase. Just build a bunch of rocks. Because we were doing the Jotunheim area, and mountains and rocks and all that, and did that, finished it up, then did a few months on Jack the Giant.
Oh boy.
Killer by then, later on known as Slayer.
Yeah.
And I don't know, this was at a time, I suppose, that there was a lot of sort of animosity. I don't know if you've noticed any of that, but between, and something I've become, or I'm trying to be very aware of, with different locations under the same studio umbrella.
Right.
And on Jack, all the giants, the creatures were being done, I believe, in San Francisco. It was just a sort of a temporary or shuttle office opened there.
Yep.
And the mood in, in the Vancouver office wasn't great because we felt like Miguel and myself and a bunch of other unbelievably talented people. I don't know if you know Miguel's girlfriend, Tran.
Yeah,
She's
Tran, of
this
course.
incredible artist, and
Yeah.
we felt like we have this, world-class team. I don't mean to say that in an arrogant way, but we were, eager to flex our creative muscles a little bit. And it seemed like all the hero giant work and creature stuff was going to San Francisco. So
There was a lot that show. I was not part of it at DD, but that show
yeah,
was the most political show ever
uh-huh,
done at DD. And I think the part of the reason was that there was a lot of people in management at DD at the time that came from ILM, and they were insistent that the only quality visual effects artists out there came from ILM and are based in the Bay Area.
oh, I see,
And
yeah,
that was and that you're absolutely right, because there was like we are the elite studio in San Francisco,
yeah,
and it's like out of nowhere. It's like Digital Domain has been in Venice, California forever, and why is this suddenly the thing? But at that, I mean, obviously, a lot of that was a long time ago, many digital domains ago.
yeah. We
But yeah,
don't
it
need
was.
to linger on that, but
No, we don't. No, we don't. I mean,
no,
it was a painful show, and I think a lot of people suffered through it, and that wasn't fair. You're right, it wasn't fair. People in the Venice office felt the same way that the Vancouver office, believe it or
yeah.
not. So
I think I would have dealt with the whole situation a little different now, but back then I was still am to a certain degree quite an emotional guy, and just very passionate. I was like, "Fuck
yeah,
this place," and they're not taking it serious. So like, try go elsewhere. Mostly immature on my part, honestly. But the mood wasn't great. It
yeah,
was, and that's what I was trying to say. That there's no necessity for that to make one
right,
facility feel like the B team. It's so unnecessary, that stress and tension.
right,
But it was, yeah. Well,
yeah.
I don't have to explain it to you.
No,
You get it. It was diplomatic. It was political
I was watching it from the other side of the wall and going, "Ooh, that doesn't look
with the
too bad."
popcorn. But
With the popcorn, I was like, "Ugh." I think
yeah,
he was nicknamed Jack the Studio Killer at one point. That's the
yeah,
Jack.
yeah. That was a rough one,
Yeah.
but I didn't sit it out to the end,
Okay.
and ended up going to a place called Look Effects.
Oh yeah.
Rest in peace.
Yeah.
But they had a fun little quirky zombie comedy by the name of Warm Bodies.
Oh, I
I don't know
love
if
that
you've ever
film.
seen that. Well, it
Yeah.
was that's some creature work for that. And again, very similar to the Frantic film situation. It's like we have landed this work, and it's like, how? It's so new and fresh for you guys. But they got it, and they needed a creature guy, so I joined and got to work with my old buddy Dimitri on that, who did the look dev for
Yep.
the the bony creatures, these decrepit, dark kind of zombie skeletal
Yep.
entities, the enemies in that movie.
Yeah.
So that was really fun, and we did a bit of that.
It's a zombie love story. It's a
Zombie
zombie.
love story, yes. It's a particular niche genre.
Yeah.
Yeah. The this was fun. Kind of
Yeah.
again that vibe, like 25, maybe 30 people in one office, super
Yeah.
personal, and just
And that
people
was
who
in
know what they
Vancouver
were
too, right?
doing.
Yeah. That was still
What's
in
that?
Vancouver. That was still in Vancouver, right?
Yeah, their first show there, they just had opened up in Vancouver. So that was really fun. And then what else? Was a bit of Game of Thrones work there, just as sort of a 911. Oh my gosh, we have additional work and we have no home for it. Can you guys help out? Which was great, but nothing to write home about. Just a handful of shots. And then there was Darren Aronofsky's Noah. We did a little bit of work on that. But as that was just about to start, I got a call from a former colleague, John Cowley, who was at Prime Focus, and they were just starting to get their hands dirty on Sin City 2. Sin City 2, A Dame to Kill For. I don't know if you've seen it, but no. interesting, and they were looking for an art director, which is just from a career perspective was an interesting thing.
Yeah.
Again, kind of came out of the blue. I had dabbled in modeling and sculpting and matte painting and concept work, and did a lot of like personal like paintings and just concepts, ideas just for myself. And John had seen these and thought, we're looking just for somebody to help all of this along, because the movie had been shot already and edited. The movie was done. There was just no environments. The whole thing Robert Rodriguez had shot was on a green screen stage in Texas, and that was it. We had a couch and a table every once in a while, but everything else needed to be designed, built, and comped.
Yep.
Heavily stylized. Like, wanted to push it further than what had been done for the first one. The first movie I love, incredible fan of that. But this was going to be a bit closer to Frank Miller's original comics even. So that sounded really interesting, and ended up doing that for a year over at Prime Focus, which I believe was actually co-producing the movie. They were production partners on that, and the task of designing the entire movie around a film that had already been finished was a really bizarre, unique opportunity to, okay, we need a doctor's office or a back alley or a big mansion, and then we need this room. It was almost like virtual production designing, working with a team of concept artists and storyboard. And one of the best things for me there was to Aisha, my wife. She's a classically trained animator, and I actually got to bring her on as a storyboard artist for that, which was
awesome.
So we got to work together, which was a lot of fun. And no, there's been plenty of good opportunities there, or experiences on that project, and plenty of less great experiences. But no, it was all in all really cool to do that.
Nice.
Gosh, going on a trip here, man.
Yeah.
Feels like therapy. Just talk about it.
Yeah, that's great. That's great. Okay, so you were back at Prime Focus. You're working on that. You started a new kind of skill set of art direction.
Yes. Yeah. And realized how much I enjoyed working with people and essentially getting the satisfaction out of creating a much larger body of work, and often just guiding that by simple feedback or paint overs. But I found that just as rewarding, or even more so than I had realized. Like, it's actually really cool to I guess I wouldn't say improve, but to help people get to that final image and get that approved by a director and design a movie. It was creatively incredibly fulfilling, and it made me realize how much I liked that, or how comfortable I was with that, rather than doing the painting myself. And so it was an interesting eye-opener for me, being in that role. I feel I should mention Alex Nice here as well.
Oh, yeah. You know all the same people.
Yeah. Alex and I had met on Tron, actually. We were both matte painting, and he had clearly more experience in that field than myself. And Alex wanted to, and successfully did, focus more on purely conceptual work. So I was able to bring him on to Sin City and work with him, and he did some fantastic illustrations for us, helping shape that movie. But he was part of that as well. So yeah, it feels like, wow, you're like bouncing all over the place, but there's always been sort of a human component that made sense at the time, like people I enjoyed working with, or gave a sort of legitimacy to a project or a studio that I felt this could be really interesting. And at this time I could sort of return the favor and work with Alex again, and it was great. And yeah, that was about a year and a bit, 14 months maybe. At which point Scanline came around. They had just opened up in Vancouver.
Yeah.
And said, we're looking for an art director, and apparently you are one. Yes, allegedly. But yeah, And yeah, we're getting a little closer to present day now, but that's
Right.
how I got there.
Wow. Okay. So you've been at Scanline for a while then.
Yeah. Yeah, 6 years now, 6, 7.
Okay. Yeah.
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 Um, yeah, so I just keep on blabbing, I feel. Is this
Don't worry
going
about
on?
it. This is great.
Yeah? We
Yeah,
good?
yeah, yeah. We're great. So you did. I mean, you've done a bunch of work at
Yes.
Scanline. What are some of your favorite projects?
Well, I think yeah, I think what happened at Scanline was interesting because as I joined, it was very much the sort of the role of make sense of this or help us fix this. That's
Got
kind
it.
of the two big things. Like either the concept art we got from production was so rough that I was asked, can you take a look at this and do a more refined version of it to help our modeling team or our, you know, our artists along to make sense of this, to instill a
Sure.
bit of, real world reference into it that we can then use. So there was a lot of that. There was some like blue sky design work for Batman, I remember, which was quite fun for Batman v Superman. Like the Batcave, what does this tunnel look like, or how does it open? Or we were doing Memorial Park for that. Just as, with the big Superman statue, some yeah, just making sense of those environments that were going to always be completely virtual, and there was no real design for them yet. So what was interesting about that particular project for that specific task was, okay, so the task itself was essentially, what does a memorial park on a former, the idea is, okay, this is a part of downtown metropolis that's been completely flattened in a fight between Superman and was it Zod? I
I think so.
forgot.
Yeah.
Yeah, in previous Superman movie. So, what does this area look like by now? We're X years further along, and what could a memorial look like? And there were some ideas for that, but mainly just the environment around it. And what is interesting and something that I dearly love about the work in general is the research process, where you're asked to kind of become an overnight expert on the most random of topics, or at least to the point of believability. At this point, it was like, okay, what does a site of a terrible tragedy look like? So I ended up looking at a lot of 9/11 documentary footage. And I remember that because it was those pretty tough days. Because what does what is a site of something like, where two massive buildings have collapsed and all that destruction? What does that cleanup process really look like? How does that? Ground Zero? What did Ground Zero look like? Half a year, a month, a year, 2 years after? What did those places look like? So I remember just being incredibly like, oh my God, like heavy-hearted going home, just exposing myself to all that stuff to kind of make sense of it and to have something to latch onto. Like, okay, I think so. We still have construction pits over here, and then maybe there's some, still leftover debris here, and this would have been
Right.
flattened, that would have been cleaned up, and you probably would still have scaffolding around the buildings that are still standing, but all of that is based on something. Getting into that design process was in a way rewarding because, well, it had to be thought of from the ground up, and I remember it because it was as emotionally loaded as it was. But other than that, I think I'm going to segue a little bit here, but Scanline was awarded a project called Miss Peregrine's Home for Peculiar Children, a Tim Burton film, and at that time especially, and to a degree now as well, but anything that had any water, CG water, Scanline would usually be on top of the list of like, that's the place you want to go to.
Right.
So the sequences that Scanline were awarded, sure enough, was a big underwater portion of the movie. Have you seen the film by
Oh,
any
yeah.
chance? So what we got initially was we have this sequence. It's in a shipwreck, the ship called the Augusta. You can think of it as the Titanic, but it's laying on the bottom of the Welsh Channel, and we don't quite know what these areas look like yet. Can you guys help us out? So the owner of Scanline, Stefan, he said, okay, we need your help on this. Can you take a look at this? So they have a set, this cocktail lounge set that they built practically, but we have this dining room and this atrium with beautiful big staircase. At least that's what they want. Can you give them something? So it was pretty rough. But I started again digging into reference, like, okay, what's the design language of these transatlantic golden age, steamboats? And like, what makes them look the way they do on the interior? And you come up, so we all know the Titanic, but we don't want to copy that verbatim. So we learned about other ships like the Britannic, the oh my gosh, what else did we have?
Queen Elizabeth, probably.
No, oh my lord. Anyway, yeah, that's time for you. But I started digging into that process of just learning about these old ships and how they were made and all the quirks about. Okay, I'm looking at a photo of a grand first class dining room, and all the chairs are bolted down and kind of swivel around. Those kind of things that make perfect sense when you see them, but
sure,
you kind of have to learn about that and the proportions. So I did some sketches for that, and then worked with our modeling department to block that out, got some renders back, and did extensive paint overs, and presented all of that as essentially a package to back to the people at Fox who were producing the movie. So it was a combination of sort of architectural, bogus architectural drawings. You could shoot holes into it, I'm sure, but elevations and sort of plans, and then some more finely, like really polished photographic paintings. Like, okay, this is what we think, and then this would be the mood, and seaweed and ripped fabric and the light and all of that. So that's a couple keyframe illustrations, and I presented at first to Stefan, and he said, okay, just repeat exactly what you said to Fraser and Hal, who were Fraser Churchill was the VFX supervisor for Fox on that movie. And I did, so it was a little spiel, and like made a little design package and put that in front of him, and said, that's great, let me show it to Tim. And like, okay, that went easy. And sure enough, like Tim Burton was like, yeah, those look like frames for my movie, do that. So that was incredible. I was like, wow, Tim Burton, damn, that's amazing. Nice. And then again, just out of the blue for me, because I was, okay, I'm really enjoying, this being creatively involved, thinking of what would something look like, what would make sense, and what besides that, what would work for the sequence and make it look as beautiful as it possibly could. I started to really enjoy that in my role as art director. And then Stefan is like, so, have you ever considered supervising? I was like, wait, what? He was dead serious. It's like, well, yeah, I mean, you present your stuff well. You clearly have a strong idea about what things could look like. So I think you'd be really good at it. And in my mind, I'm going like, what, visual effects supervisor? I thought you had to be like John Knoll, essentially write Photoshop, right, to have any credibility in that field. So for me, it came as a big surprise, and I felt like, I have so many shortcomings, in terms of my technical prowess and expertise. For what do I know? It's like, trust me, just do it. It's like, right. So, all right, I'll just do it. And my God, I'm so happy that I did, because it turned out, like you asked, about what was a memorable project. Well, that really was because of the experience of essentially taking something from script to then thinking, what could it look like? Right. Doing the paintings, presenting them, the director saying, yes, that please. And then seeing all the shots through to completion. Yeah. And I can still look at those frames and put them next to the paintings I did. And it's like, they're so close. So really felt like I was able to put something
Yeah.
on myself on there
Yeah.
on the screen. Incredibly rewarding,
It's a
creative.
beautiful sequence. I love that sequence, especially when she
Thank you.
sucks in all the water, and that's just, I mean,
Yes, yeah,
it's incredible.
yeah.
Yeah.
Well, all the
Uh,
props to some of the genius people at Scanline because
yeah.
they know my background. They know exactly. I try to help out where I can and do paintings and just visualize things. But at the end of the day, I'm not the guy that says, yeah, these are the parameters or the functions you need to change in order to improve the effects. But they've got some of the world's best people for that. These German scientists. that,
Yeah.
They'll figure it out. I don't need to interfere.
Nice. Nice. Okay. So what was your first job as a VFX supervisor there?
It would have been, yeah, Miss Peregrine.
Miss Peregrine. That's
This
awesome.
segue from art directing into
You went
visual
right
effects
into,
supervision.
oh, wow. That's cool. That's
Yeah.
really cool. All right.
Yeah, so it was a big learning experience, and the way I fell into it, which is truly what it is, fell into it. It was a bit uncertain, and it was or insecure in many ways about it. But so many people said, just you have such a strong idea about what you want. It's so helpful for us, and you can always paint it. So I started to get a little bit more confidence, knowing that okay, it seems that people are able to work with what I'm giving them, and I think the end result is pretty good. And I got some really positive responses from both Fraser and Tim Burton himself. And I was just okay. Well, maybe this is it for me. And
Awesome.
yeah,
Awesome.
yeah, that's how that happened.
Well, cool.
The supervising thing.
The supervising thing. Well, I want to make sure we are able to talk about some of the more current projects you've been working on. I just actually a few days ago watched The Eternals, which was pretty
Okay.
awesome. So
All
I
right.
was able to see that, which was that was the first time I've ever been in a theater since the pandemic. So that was a little bit an emotional moment, shall
Yeah.
we say?
Yeah,
Have you seen it? Obviously, you've seen it.
many times,
Many
various
times.
stages. Yeah,
Various stages.
but I have
Yes.
seen the finished version,
Right.
the alleged finished version. No, yeah.
Yeah.
I've seen it. It's I mean it's always bittersweet for me seeing the finished
Yeah.
products because I usually need a little time to decompress
Sure.
and get some distance between doing the work and seeing the work. And that
Yeah.
usually is for me, I think 2 or 3 years when I can look at it objectively and
Yep.
possibly enjoy it. But right now, it's probably not the right guy to ask what I think of it. Because all I can tell you is how it could have been better, at least
Right.
how I think it may have could have been better. But it is what it is. Those movies are such creative marvels, pardon the pun. But that was a particularly challenging project for many reasons, mostly because it was completely done remotely.
Yeah. I was going to ask
During the
about that.
pandemic, all of a sudden that switch and doing a movie of that caliber, yeah, that's
Yeah.
crazy.
What was that like?
What was that like? Gosh. Well, the fortunate thing was that Scanline was well prepared for it in a way, because we have been using PC over IP technology for a while. Like our physical machines have always been in a Los Angeles data center, highly secured.
Right.
And while I was working in Vancouver, I'm in London right now.
Okay.
Yeah, even in Vancouver, we never had a physical machine at our desk. It was always already connected through a fiber line to the Los Angeles data center. So that was no different in London when we opened that, which was another memorable aspect for me was an opportunity to live a little closer back home again and move to London, which is only an hour's flight away from the Netherlands, which is nice. But to do that show, yeah, in a way, we were already working remotely. All we had was our monitors and a little pod connecting us to our workstations in LA.
Right.
And miraculously, we're at this day and age where that is virtually no different than having your machine under your desk. It's incredible. So when it came time when the pandemic struck and it became obvious like this thing is serious and it's here to stay, Stefan was ahead of the curve and he just ordered 1,000 of these pods. And at a certain point, the call was made, all right, guys, take a monitor, take 2 if you need it. Take a Wacom tablet. Here's a little firewall and a pod. And we're going to try this work from home thing. And it literally happened overnight. And it was as seamless as I could have never thought that there was virtually no difference.
Wow.
For us. And that sort of proof that the only thing that was really in the way of making that happen has been the studios, Disney's and the Warner Brothers, and their strict contracts. Okay, we need people in a secure location that we can monitor. So far, we've been pretty good proving that concern wasn't as necessary, perhaps, but.
Well, they weren't going to get a movie otherwise.
They were, yeah, exactly. Yeah.
So they were forced to go. I mean, I think I don't want to say anything that they were wrong about it, but they were extremely strict. They treated their IP like it was the Pentagon codes to the bombs, right? And so, but
yes.
they didn't. I think the pandemic proved that that's not necessarily. You can create a system where people can work from home and it still works, if you find the right envelope around it, right?
Yeah, it comes with a level of trust that I think is at a certain point necessary, or nothing will ever get made. But
Right.
yeah, we've been good. We were all asked, kind of show what your work situation is like at home, like in case you're working in front of a giant window, we may need to ask you to put up some shutters.
Right.
But other than that, it was so smooth. And it just, I personally, I miss having a big screen to review things on.
Right.
Because you just catch different things. I mean, the bigger picture helps with catching stuff that you don't see on a regular monitor. So sitting in a theater, you just pay attention to different stuff. At least I do. Mm-hmm. That's a little different. And personally, I am right now at this stage. I am missing seeing people, and just it's not so much the reviews, because for me that is sitting in a dark theater room looking at a screen. It's not like I'm looking people in the eye while we're talking, but it's the
Right.
Getting a coffee, walking past people, like, oh, what was that? What are you working on there? Or seeing people on different that are working perhaps on different projects, and that kind of interaction is what I've started to miss. But from a productivity and a production point of view, I mean, it's worked remarkably well. I think I haven't noticed much of that. Everybody's has adapted to it so quickly, and fascinating, really.
Right. Yeah. Well, that's good. Do you think that this is going to be something that's going to stay in a lot of ways, or
I
some
think
form
it's
of it?
definitely going to stay, and if it's not going to stay, I think people will demand it. I mean, for many people, it has been an incredibly, silver lining, especially in times of crunch time, where all of a sudden they, colleagues of mine get to have lunch with their families every day, or see their kids, and then I hear other colleagues saying, "Oh my God, get me away from these kids!" in an office again. It's so personal, but I think it's going to have to be at least something that can be negotiated by people, that artists say, "I want to have the ability to work from home."
Right.
Even if, let's hope when this all passes, it won't necessarily be needed or necessary anymore.
Well,
I think a lot of people like it.
There's so much, we mentioned at the beginning, there's so much content being made, and there's such a demand for artists right now that I think the studios are going to be obligated to be flexible, so that they can allow for some of those people to do what they want to do,
I think so, and I think it has many benefits. I mean, you live in LA yourself. I've spent a little bit of time in LA, enough to know about the commuting and the traffic.
Oh my God.
And I'm sure many people don't miss those 2.5 hours they spend in their cars.
Nope.
And yeah, I think a hybrid for me, and I'm sure there's other people that would agree, is it would be ideal.
Right.
Like, I would love to get some FaceTime in. I would love to review things on a big screen a few times when we're getting into that stage where it is about polishing the images and looking at potential final comps. From a creative point of view, that would help. But there's solutions for that. But the idea that of a hybrid where you can work from home perfectly fine, but have a little bit more of a social sort of work life and get some FaceTime in with people, and that sense of a bit more, that sense of camaraderie, get that back into the picture would be a wonderful mix if that were to be a reality.
Do you think also in terms of talent, you mentioned, you work from home when you're in the Netherlands or whatever, but now suddenly, because you're being more flexible. I noticed, for example, this podcast, right? I used to only do them in person because that was my stance. And then the pandemic happened and I had to be more flexible about it, right? And now suddenly I'm talking to you and I didn't even know you were in London. I was like, I don't know where he is, but I'm talking to him and this is great. So do you think that that's something that, you can sort of look at a broader talent pool that's out there because you can basically work from anywhere?
Yes, and no, there's still restrictions. Obviously, the industry is very much based on tax incentives, as you would know.
Yep.
And the work often goes to the places where the biggest rebates can be earned by the studios awarding the work.
Right.
That's always going to be the case. And contractually, at times, visual effects houses are being held to that. You're going to get the work, but we need a certain percentage of it to be done in London, in Munich,
Right.
in Vancouver, and all these other places for specific tax credits. So you do need a majority of people to be tax residents of certain places to be eligible for that. Will that change? I don't know. It has larger implications than just the ability to work from home, to which, that is not an issue anymore. As long as you're somewhat proficient in English, you can show up at the right times, that's fine. And you produce good work. I mean,
Yep.
Okay, maybe that. But there is that side of the business, the contractual obligations to, well, when the British government has these grants, for instance, they expect it's for one reason, which is to create jobs in this case in London, and to get people work here. So when then, if Scanline would say, sure, we'll take the work, but, meanwhile, the people actually doing the work are in wherever.
Right.
It doesn't work like that. So, but there is a level of flexibility, and Scanline has embraced that. And we have quite a significant component of our current team. We've gone through a big growth spurt over the last 2 years, really. And a lot of those people, they are remote. And here in London, everybody's remote right now. We don't really have a physical presence at the moment.
Right.
So, hard to say where that's going to go, but
Yeah, it seems like
idea.
Scanline's hiring everyone. Everyone.
You think so?
Yeah, yes, a lot of friends I know have gone to Scanline, which is great. I think this is a really good growth.
Well, I think everybody is looking for people because the sheer amount of content being created. I mean, when I got started in this, or when I just started to figure out what I wanted to do, it was Star Wars, Lord of the Rings, Jurassic Park. But it's these once a decade kind of movies that sort of shaped that feeling of like, wow, wouldn't it be amazing to be part of these the telling of these incredible stories.
Right.
And now, I mean, we have so much content, and it's not just the theatrical releases, but we have Netflix, HBO, we have Disney Plus, Amazon Prime, there's so much stuff and so much work. I think everybody's hungry for talent, and that's not a bad thing, but it is, yeah. We deal with our fair share of competition as well. I mean, people seem to have plenty of options at the moment. It's the heyday for the artists, I think, getting.
Yes.
Yeah.
That's what I've been hearing for sure. I haven't been on, I haven't been in the visual effects production side for a while, but I speak to obviously tons of people.
Mm-hmm.
It's like everyone, like it is the advantage artist right now, and everyone's trying to find that talent, and it's interesting. It's very interesting.
Yeah, I mean, it doesn't come without complications, but I think in general it's a good thing, and it's definitely an interesting step for the industry as a whole.
Right.
The working from home part has not been entirely negative. I think it's upset the landscape enough that it's going to have some lasting repercussions on the way we work and what it means to work in visual effects, period, and the expectations of that. But many good things, and yeah, it's not perfect, but it's not entirely bad, I think, for anyone.
Right. Well, that's amazing. I think it's going to be interesting, and we've actually been gone over an hour, which is great, and I'm very it's really I love this. I love your story. Your story is fantastic, and obviously the work at Scanline that you guys are doing there is really cool. And I think Stefan did a really wise thing of pushing you into being a VFX supervisor.
Well, I guess it's a compliment to Stefan, but thank you. I'll take it regardless.
Well, I think he's. I know the thing is, seeing talent is something that's very important, and I think that sometimes we don't always notice it in ourselves, and I think that being able to do that is really great. And I love the story of that show that you were the ship, designing the ship and figuring out what it's like and understanding that.
Yeah, it's interesting. Like with Stefan, but also with the other moments, whether it was from Chris or from John, it's always been. For me, it came at a time where I was hyper focused on being the best at what I was trying to be doing at the time, and then being offered something that I hadn't really actively thought about, and it's taught me. Sorry, that's a Dutchism for you right there. It's. It taught me to, be, in general, not try to plan too much, because improvisation is probably your best friend in this business as it is. But yeah, life just has a way to figure things out for you. There's not that much you can do about it. Be along for the ride and at least look in the right direction when opportunities come along. And sometimes, take a leap of faith and take these opportunities. But I couldn't have planned any of it, honestly.
Right.
Yeah.
That's really, really cool. Well, thank you, Jelmer. I really appreciate you being on and being able to talk to us about your story. It looks great. And congratulations on all the amazing work that you guys have done.
Thank you so much. Yeah, it's been fun. Well,
Okay,
hopefully you do get to meet in person one day, because I feel you owe me a whiskey. I've missed out.
Deal. Yeah, because it's already your evening in London. So
it's past happy hour here, Chris.
Oh yeah. Yep. Sorry, I'm still drinking coffee. I'm still getting things going.
That's your excuse, I suppose.
Yeah.
But anyway, it would be wonderful to meet in person.
For sure.
Who knows?
Sure. All right. Well, thanks so much.
Thanks for having me.